Yu Menglong's disappearance continues to generate intense buzz on social media, even though nearly 2 months have passed since the incident and authorities have officially declared the case closed. The persistence with which the actor's fans demand justice has turned the issue into a continuous focus of public debate. For those wondering why fans have devoted so much time and effort to questioning the official version, it's worth systematically reviewing all the elements that have been the subject of suspicion and discussion surrounding this case. The first point of controversy arises from the official account of the accident's circumstances. According to the police statement, Yu Menglong, in a state of intoxication and impaired judgment, had mistakenly opened the window of his apartment and fallen to his death. However, on the NIT of the 24th, a woman identifying herself as a lawyer in Beijing and a resident of the Yangguang Shandong residential complex, where the incident occurred, posted a video questioning this explanation. According to her own testimony, she lives in building number 15, while the Yu Menglong incident took place in building number 18 of the same complex. In the video, she described the layout of the apartments, spacious units of over 100 square meters, with an open-plan design, large floor-to-ceiling windows, and balconies with glass railings instead of brick walls. He also stated that all the complex's windows have raised frames and robust security grills. In his view, if a person had jumped or fallen suddenly, visible damage to these elements should have been observed. At the scene, however, no traces of breakage or deformation were found. The same neighbor added that the windows are designed to open inward, which, according to her, makes it less likely that an accidental fall to the outside would occur. She also emphasized that the windowsill is at a considerable height, which, in her opinion, would almost rule out the possibility of a person in an intoxicated state accidentally falling out. His statements quickly attracted a large number of comments. However, shortly thereafter, the video was removed from the original platform. Some users who had saved a copy in advance re-uploaded it to other social media platforms, where it continued to fuel public discussions. The second focus of suspicion centers on the behavior of the people who, according to various sources, attended the last party in which Yu Menglong participated. The meeting took place at the private residence of screenwriter Zhao, a close friend of the actor for years and the author of several scripts for highly popular online series. According to the images captured by the building's security cameras, the party lasted from 8:15 p.m. until approximately 2:40 a.m. The following morning, at 1:50 a.m., the video surveillance system recorded Yu Menglong entering the elevator, supported by two men. The actor's face looked extremely pale, his legs wouldn't respond normally, and he was heard muttering that he didn't want to keep drinking. In contrast, another attendee insisted that he keep going and, according to the released transcripts, reportedly told him something along the lines of, "Hang in there. Don't ruin everyone's fun." The inventory of beverages consumed that night has also drawn attention. It was reported that 10 bottles of hard liquor, 24 beers, and 4 bottles of red wine were emptied, including a 1982 bottle of Chateau Lafite Rothschild, supposedly gifted by a wealthy businessman. The building's cleaning worker stated that when she went to the apartment the next morning to carry out her duties, the living room was still permeated by a strong smell of alcohol. There were traces of vomit on the sofa, while the trash can overflowed with empty bottles and used tissues. Also, in that context, the camera system seemed to contradict some public statements made by several people involved in the case. Director Wang, who had worked with Yu Menglong on 2 audiovisual projects, declared immediately after the incident that he had no private relationship with him and that on the night in question, he had been at home reviewing scripts without leaving at any point. However, security footage showed a man identified as Director Wang himself entering the elevator at 9:27 p.m., wearing a suit and holding 2 bottles of liquor in his hand. At 2:30 m, the same person left the premises alone and in such a hurry that he collided with the building worker's cleaning cart. Another figure who has raised doubts is Yu Menglong's manager, Liu. According to the call log, the representative's phone received 3 important calls in the approximate time frame when the incident with the actor occurred. The last of those calls was reportedly made at 2:10 a.m. After hearing it, manager Liu, according to reports, urged everyone present to leave the premises. The most striking detail is that these 3 calls reportedly came from a virtual number that was subsequently deactivated. The homeowner himself, screenwriter Zhao, has also been described as a figure with enigmatic behavior. It has been reported that he abruptly abandoned the luxurious apartment he owned in Chaoyang on the 3rd day after the incident. A neighbor stated that around 4 a.m. he was awakened by strange noises. When he looked out, he would have seen 4 men dressed in black entering and leaving Zhao's apartment, carrying cardboard boxes instead of furniture. The screenwriter seemed very nervous, constantly checking his phone, before getting into a black SUV with no visible license plate. Later, the police acknowledged that Zhao's whereabouts were unknown. The screenwriter's last cell phone record pointed to a remote location in Hebei province. Another missing person linked to the case is Du Qiang, Yu Menglong's personal manager. Some rumors indicate that Du Qiang may have fled to Taiwan, taking with him sensitive information about Tianyu, the agency responsible for the actor's professional management. Various online comments have highlighted that this manager was also involved in the career of the late artist Qiao Renliang, a singer and actor who died in circumstances that had already raised numerous questions in 2016. At the time, Qiao Renliang's death was officially ruled a suicide, but doubts and alternative theories persisted in the public's mind. The fact that two artists, both managed by the same agency or by related individuals, died unexpectedly has reinforced the impression that this could be a troubling pattern. Some internet users have suggested that there may be an organized criminal structure surrounding this professional environment and that Du Qiang would be a key link in that chain. In that same context, several bloggers pointed out that Tianyu had quickly removed Yu Menglong's name from its corporate website, giving the impression that it wanted to distance itself from the case. The public's reaction was swift, and the company, as well as its parent company, Mangle Supermedia, became the target of intense criticism. It has been reported that the parent company's market capitalization fell by around 80 billion yuan in just 3 days, triggering a wave of layoffs and the quiet resignation of several executives during September and October 2025. Additionally, several audiovisual projects associated with people who reportedly attended Yu Menglong's party faced significant boycotts. The film The Next Typhoon, produced by Fang Li and slated for release in late October 2025, was the subject of heavy criticism on social media. Advance ticket sales plummeted from expectations of nearly 100 million yuan to around 12,000 yuan, far below initial projections. Another production featuring actress Dian Haizhong, who was also identified as an attendee at the party, similarly faced significant rejection, with first-day box office figures of around 180,000 yuan, considered very low for that type of release. These data have been interpreted by many as evidence that public distrust extended beyond the individual case and pointed to a broader network. In early October, a widely circulated video heightened the sense of bewilderment. The images show a man, whom some users identified as Yu Menglong, being dragged across the floor while several people in disturbing costumes surround him. Many viewers wondered if they were watching a real scene of torture before his death. The hypothesis that the actor had been assaulted and abused, which until then had been considered an extreme conjecture, seemed to gain traction thanks to this audiovisual material. However, upon closer examination, several internet users and media specialists clarified that the video actually belonged to a horror-themed escape room game. In the recording, the man being dragged showed no pain or panic, and at one point he was even seen clapping and laughing. The costumed individuals were wearing outfits similar to those worn by employees of haunted houses, not by members of a criminal group. As a result, the platform where it was initially shared labeled the video as false in relation to the Yu Menglong case. Even so, fragments of the footage continued to circulate, edited, and taken out of context. When this misinformation was debunked, some members of the public expressed relief upon learning that the scene was not linked to an actual incident of violence against the actor. However, correcting the information did not eliminate doubts surrounding the case. The atmosphere of suspicion remained unchanged. On October 8th, Chinese social media was once again in an uproar following the alleged leak of a document described as Yu Menglong's autopsy report. According to the description, the text, accompanied by images, detailed multiple severe injuries, suggesting that the cause of death could not be explained solely by an accidental fall and pointing to a possible assault. The impact on public opinion was considerable, and numerous voices demanded official answers. However, a significant anomaly was soon detected. Some users compared the wording and formatting of the alleged report with another forensic document that circulated online in 2012. Several sections matched almost verbatim in structure and wording, suggesting that the recent text might have been an adaptation of older material. This similarity gave rise to the hypothesis that the so-called leaked report was actually a manipulated document generated to fuel the controversy. The confirmation of this possible forgery increased the general confusion. In an environment saturated with rumors and contradictory content, many users expressed that they no longer knew which sources were even minimally reliable. In this context, Some wondered whether the dissemination of false documents was part of a deliberate strategy to further muddy the information landscape or to divert attention from other elements. Despite the proliferation of dubious data, several more solid indications led some members of the public to consider the possibility that Yu Menglong had been the victim of a broader, organized, and long-term operation. Analyses of the actor's career trajectory mentioned that the Tianyu agency had imposed very strict contractual clauses and that, according to rumors, the performer had been professionally frozen for 3 years for refusing to accept certain unwritten rules from a high-level industry executive. According to testimonies attributed to internal sources, Yu Menglong reportedly told his mother that a powerful person was treating him like a puppet, and that the sums of money that suddenly appeared in his bank account repulsed him because he didn't consider them the fruit of his legitimate work, but dirty, blood-stained money. In some accounts, it is indicated that the actor used the expression a prince or a lord of the highest rank to refer to the person who, according to him, controlled his professional destiny. These metaphorical expressions were interpreted as an allusion to someone at the pinnacle of power, capable of influencing both the artistic sphere and other levels of public life. This detail caused a great stir and led part of the audience to speculate that a figure from the political elite was behind the tragedy. In that scenario, the case would no longer be perceived solely as an individual criminal matter, but would instead be seen as a potential political scandal. It is significant that this information did not come from an official statement, but from an overseas content creator, a Chinese YouTuber known as Lao Deng. Toward the end of this month, this content creator claimed that Yu Menglong's mother had written a letter of appeal in which she identified the alleged perpetrator of her son's death with a bloody fingerprint and asserted that she possessed crucial evidence. However, when Lao Deng tried to contact her through intermediaries, he was informed that the woman had been moved out of Beijing and was under heavy surveillance. This event sparked deep fear among internet users, who even raised the possibility that the actor's mother had been silenced or held against her will. The extreme scenario of witness elimination was even mentioned, in which anyone connected to the case would be neutralized. The tension stemming from these theories reached such a level that a blogger named Lin Beichuan, who had previously commented on the case openly, felt compelled to clarify that according to the information he had, Yu Menglong's family was safe, and he urged the public not to spread rumors about any alleged harm to the mother. This statement helped to partially reduce the fear of a violent outcome for family members. However, it did not eliminate the perception that there might be tight control mechanisms in place, and that powerful interests were still at work to keep key parties silent. Meanwhile, enigmatic information continued to surface. Yu Menglong's friend, Wang Yushen, posted on the social media platform Weibo that the actor's 2 dogs had been handed over to an unidentified person shortly after his death. Shortly thereafter, that post was also deleted. This seemingly minor detail involving 2 pets sparked a new wave of concern. Some users wondered why even something so mundane had to be handled with such discretion, and what prompted the animal's swift removal. In that climate, an audio file attributed to Yu Menglong began circulating, in which sobs and words laden with pain could be heard, including a phrase that was interpreted as a farewell. "We won't be able to be together anymore." Many listeners linked the message to the possibility that the actor was witnessing harm being inflicted on his dogs, and a theory emerged that the animals had been used to intimidate or coerce him. Even though the authenticity of the recording has not been conclusively verified, its dissemination added another dramatic layer to the web of suspicions, fueling the idea that Yu Menglong had been living under extreme pressure exerted by hidden actors. Subsequently, a blogger who presented himself as Red Descendant, i.e., the heir of former high-ranking officials, claimed to know the identity of the person at the top of the plot. It turned out to be the same Lin Beichuan mentioned earlier, who, through a secondary account, circulated a photograph of a man he identified as the main culprit in the case, while the other individuals involved would only play secondary roles or serve as a smokescreen. According to his testimony, every time he posted the image, it would disappear from Weibo almost immediately, and his account would be blocked. The blogger maintained that the platform system automatically removed the photograph because the individual depicted enjoyed special protection online. He claimed to have tried to publish the image 3 times in a single day, and on all 3 occasions, it was quickly removed, along with warnings about possible visits if he persisted. Lin Beichuan added that on one occasion he was about to report this person at an in-person meeting, but he was ultimately detained in Beijing for 15 days without being allowed to travel. These accounts reinforced among some members of the audience the idea that the alleged suspect possessed an extraordinary capacity for influence, to the point of controlling the visibility of content on social media. Later, the blogger himself hinted that the individual belonged to the country's elite political circle. With the accumulation of these scattered pieces of information, many users began to consider the hypothesis that, if it was indeed a homicide, the perpetrator would hardly be an anonymous figure from the actor's inner circle, but rather someone positioned at a level of power that ordinary citizens could scarcely question. At the same time, starting on day 21, the police stopped providing new information about possible suspects and focused their efforts on combating the spread of online rumors. This shift reinforced the feeling among some sectors that there was a rush to conclude the case and steer the public discussion. Amid the lack of official updates on the investigation, another line of rumor mongering gained traction, this time concerning the whereabouts of Yu Menglong's body. The story circulated that the actor had been physically abused at a luxury hotel in Beijing and then transferred to a tech company in Jiangsu, before finally being taken to the Yangguang Shandong residential complex, where the fall from the building was staged. After his death, according to these accounts, the body was transported to the art district known as 798 and kept in a cold storage unit hidden in a museum. The theory held that this would be the reason why no clear images of the body had been released and no public funeral had been held. It was also noted that the museum in question announced a temporary closure between mid-August and September 2025, coinciding with the dates of the case, which some interpreted as an attempt to clean up any uncomfortable traces. In this scenario, elements of a supposedly esoteric nature began to circulate. Some users claimed that in the 798 Art District Museum, there was a ritual arrangement called the Seven-Star Formation to enclose the soul, designed to trap the spirits of the deceased and prevent them from finding rest or seeking justice. According to these accounts, the museum had in the past housed the remains of victims from other mysterious cases and, for example, used red cords tied to the body's shoes as a symbolic method to keep their souls bound to the place. It was also emphasized that this museum would be managed by a state-owned conglomerate whose name also included the phrase 7 stars, which was taken as another striking coincidence. These hard-to-verify elements added an almost legendary component to the story, blending superstition and detective fiction. At the same time, rumors emerged about an alleged exhibition at the museum that would have displayed objects indirectly alluding to the case of Yu Menglong and other celebrities who died under controversial circumstances. Among them, a skull with facial features resembling those of actor and singer Chow Renliang was mentioned, whose death in 2016 had already given rise to alternative interpretations. At the time, some users pointed out that Chow's body exhibited anomalies during the burial, such as the absence of an arm and the presence of a plastic structure in the abdominal area, which fueled speculation about prior interventions. Now, with the appearance of a supposedly similar skull at the 798 Museum, the theory that it could be human remains displayed as part of an exhibition has been revived. Alongside that alleged skull, clothing and footwear were described that resembled those worn by Chow Renliang and by Yu Menglong himself. These mentions sparked concern and rejection among internet users. The 72-year-old Hong Kong singer, Jen Ni, who has been very active in demanding justice for Yu Menglong, recounted on social media that 2 decades earlier, she had visited a human body exhibition with her daughter. She recalled that this impression those pieces made on her was so intense that she felt nauseous and a profound sense of unease. Now, relating that experience to the new information, he said he feared that many of those samples were actually the remains of real victims. Another element mentioned in the descriptions of the museum's alleged pieces was a hybrid figure with a human body and a fish head, whose image reportedly had a profound impact on those who saw it. Some internet users suggested that it could symbolize the alleged torment suffered by Yu Menglong, linking it to scenes of confinement in water-related spaces or with marine animals. Although these interpretations lack objective confirmation, the image of the fishman spread widely as a disturbing symbol. A jacket very similar to one worn by the actor was also mentioned, with dried red stains that resembled bloodstains. If the authenticity of the garment were confirmed, it could reinforce theories of an assault prior to the fall, but the sources of this information come from unofficial websites and lack independent verification. All of these elements have contributed to the collective imagination's shift in perception of Area 798 from an artistic space to a possible site of illicit activities, a place where, according to the most extreme narratives, illegal detention, corpse storage, and experimental laboratory functions could have been combined. Of course, these are constructions that blend facts, rumors, and speculation, but they show the extent to which the case has impacted public perception. As a result of the growing sensitivity surrounding the issue, terms such as 798 or human samples began to be heavily moderated on domestic social media platforms, which in turn increased users' curiosity and anxiety. On the 13th, the Weibo platform announced the removal of more than 4,300 posts and the suspension of over 60 accounts on the grounds that they incited unfounded complaints, conspiracy theories, and the spread of unverified information about the Yu Menglong case. On the 20th, the Cyberspace Administration of China summoned Weibo executives to reprimand them for the presence of content deemed harmful on the trending search lists and demanded measures to rectify information management. Shortly thereafter, the Kuaishu platform and other networks such as Douyin also announced campaigns to clean up content related to the case. On the 23rd, Weibo announced the removal of over 100,000 posts, the closure or suspension of more than 1,000 accounts, and the temporary disabling of comments for 15,000 users who, according to the platform, had deliberately exaggerated the case or incited negative emotions. From that moment on, Yu Menglong's name was considered a sensitive term or was even blocked outright in certain internal search engines. In response, many users began using nicknames and abbreviations to continue discussing the topic, employing, for example, homophonic expressions such as little fish or acronyms accompanied by emoticons to evade the filters. Videos and posts about the case were edited in reverse, slowed down, or had their subtitles modified to bypass moderation. When Weibo and Douyin further tightened their controls, part of the community moved the debate to international platforms by using tools to bypass the firewalls, turning to services such as Facebook or Threads. On the Facebook page of the Chinese State Council's Taiwan Affairs Office, for example, numerous comments bearing the name Yu Menglong began to appear as a form of symbolic protest against censorship. This dynamic has been interpreted as a prolonged tug-of-war between the actor's fans and the content control system, demonstrating a determination to keep the memory of the case alive despite the restrictions. At the same time, fans took their support to physical spaces. Coinciding with the 1-month anniversary of his death in October 2025, it was reported that fans in several cities had purchased advertising space in shopping malls, subway stations, and buses to display photographs of Yu Menglong, accompanied by tribute messages. These LED panels and screens were interpreted as a silent way to demand justice and maintain the actor's presence in the public sphere. Some accounts indicate that these materials were later removed by local authorities, citing regulations on advertising in public spaces. Within the entertainment world, several figures expressed their sorrow and raised questions about the official version. Master Sun Rong, considered Yu Menglong's first mentor in his artistic career, published a message on the 12th calling for clarification of the events leading up to the actor's death and advocating for a collective effort to eradicate the industry's unwritten rules. In his statement, he encouraged fans and fellow professionals to remain united in the pursuit of justice, so that Yu Menglong could rest in dignity. Actor Li Dingjie, who had shared the stage with Yu Menglong in a live broadcast shortly before the tragedy, also publicly expressed his concern. During a broadcast on the 16th, he criticized the silence of those who had been present at the party, noting that the more information was withheld, the more suspicions grew, and insinuating that the truth might be being buried by those with direct knowledge of the events. In Taiwan, veteran singer Zhen Ni repeatedly used her social media to express outrage at what she considered injustices surrounding the case, even writing that it was a situation in which patience was no longer possible, and that the level of public indignation was reaching a critical point. Some compared the reality of the entertainment industry to dystopian fictions, mentioning productions such as Squid Game. Despite the force of these interventions, the situation, from an institutional standpoint, appears to have been closed. The official version maintains that it was an accidental fall under the influence of alcohol. However, in the digital sphere, questions persist about the sequence of events, the actors involved, and the degree of transparency in the investigation. In this context, the question many are asking is whether there is any real possibility of reopening or reviewing the case. The answer depends both on the eventual emergence of new evidence and on the evolution of the social and media climate. Meanwhile, supporters continue to share messages, images, and analyses with the intention that Yu Menglong's story will not be forgotten or buried in administrative silence.